Hi, my name is Steve Shikaze and I work as a Senior Hydrogeological Engineer for Matrix Solutions in Guelph, Ontario. My talk today is called Delineation of a Regional Recharge Area with a specific focus on the Waterloo Moraine in the region of Waterloo. I'd like to start just by taking a moment to acknowledge the contributions of the co-authors of this work, in particular my colleague at Matrix, Galen Merritt, who has developed the tools and run the models to generate the results that I'll be presenting here. Paul Martin has worked on the Waterloo Marine and developed models for decades now. And our client at the region of Waterloo, our clients are Eric Hodgins and Don Corbett, both of whom are senior hydrogeologists with the region. Just a quick overview of the structure of this presentation. First, the why. I'll be discussing some of the objectives, the drivers of this work. From then I'll move on to the what, and I'll be talking about groundwater recharge as it relates to the water budget. In terms of the where, the region of Waterloo lies here outlined in black. It lies west of Lake Ontario, west of the city of Toronto. And finally, the how, the quantitative tools. I'll be looking at 3D regional groundwater flow model and the use of particle tracking on those model results. For objectives, Matrix has for a number of years now supported the region of Waterloo in terms of source water protection, with a specific focus for this work of understanding better the groundwater recharge across the Waterloo Moraine. Specifically looking at the spatial distribution of recharge and the fate of recharge. In other words, when that recharge enters the groundwater system, where does it end up and how long does it take to get there? So just a quick map here on the right showing the Grand River watershed, the cities of Waterloo and Kitchener here in the center of the watershed, followed by Cambridge and Guelph as well. The Grand River bisects this watershed and flows into Lake Erie. Simplified water budget shown here. We're looking at a number of different components and a lot of symbology on here, but if we think about precipitation as it hits the ground, it can go several different ways. First of all, it can be taken up by transpiration through roots and trees and so on. It can evaporate back into the atmosphere. It can run off on the surface to low-lying depressions or flow into a surface water body. And some of it makes it into the ground through the unsaturated zone. And the amount of that reaches the water table, the saturated zone, is what we're going to refer to as groundwater recharge here. Once that recharge is into the groundwater flow system, it can move towards pumping wells, it can discharge at surface water bodies, and then you have this more regional component of groundwater flow as well. So these terms here are the groundwater recharge terms. So the region of Waterloo has a population of over 600,000, and it's estimated that it'll be well over 700,000 within 10 years. Groundwater is an important factor in all of this because about 75% of all the water supply is from groundwater, with about 100 municipal wells and a total pumping rate of over 100,000 cubic meters per day. You can see here, there's where region of Waterloo is. City of Waterloo is up in this area. That's where I'm sitting right now. City of Kitchener down here, and City of Cambridge is down in this area. Guelph's over here to the east. The Waterloo Moraine is one of several important moraines in southern Ontario. The Oak Ridge Moraine here, which trends west to east across the area north of the City of Toronto, north of Lake Ontario. You have the Paris and Galt Moraines here, which are important to Guelph. And the Waterloo Moraine is this darker green feature here, which again, you can see the black line that outlines the Grand River watershed. The Waterloo Moraine lies in this area and is a very important recharge feature that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail. A little bit of a close-up here. We've got the Waterloo Moraine shown as this light blue area that encompasses this orange area. The interpreted recharge area from previous work is this orange area. The Grand River here flows roughly north to south here in the east. And you can see the well fields shown as pink dots here, municipal wells such as the Herb Street well field, Mannheim and Parkway in Strasbourg and so on. The outline of the moraine here shows the importance of the moraine in recharge and how it supplies water to all of these well fields. And some interpreted flow directions are shown here as red lines. You have a topographic high of the moraine out here, and water flowing to the west off of that topographic high, and then to the east as well, supplying water not only to the wells, but eventually to the Grand River. A schematic cross-section is shown in this slide, and it shows that we've got roughly a west to east cross-section, the Waterloo Marine again representing a topographic high with the Grand River here to the east. The Waterloo Marine is a series of interbedded aquifers and aquitards, high permeability, low permeability materials, and we've drawn on some schematic or generic flow lines here in blue to represent what we think is happening out there. So on the topographic high, you've got some sands, rainwater gets in as recharge, flows down, flows along some of the deeper aquifers, some flowing into bedrock as well. And these gray columns here near the Grand River, closer to the Grand River, represent some of the pumping wells. So you've got some pumping wells pumping from shallow aquifers and some pumping from deeper and even into the bedrock wells as well. So you can see the importance of the moraine, the higher elevations of the moraine as recharge areas. So that sets up the problem, or at least the issues that we're looking at. And the groundwater recharge is assessed in this particular case by a three-dimensional groundwater flow model. It's a regional scale model developed over many years by many different people, and it's been set up in this case to represent average or steady state groundwater flow conditions. Once we built that model and calibrated it and ensured or gained the confidence that it's representative of what we're seeing based on the observation data and so on, we run the model and we take the results of the model and generate a three-dimensional groundwater flow field. That flow field can be used to track hypothetical water particles through it. And in this case, this is just showing a single water particle, or a single, let's say, numerical water particle released here at this high area. And we can track that through time through that steady state, three-dimensional groundwater flow field. We can see which elements it goes through, and each element here in the model represents a hydrostratigraphic or geologic unit. Some of those aquifers and aquitards, we've talked about those geological layers. So we can track that particle through time, to find out how long it's taking to move from point to point, and eventually it comes out at some what we're calling receptors. So that receptor can be a municipal pumping well, or that can be a surface water body, for example, a wetland or a stream. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. So that previous slide shows a single particle. What we did in this regional model was we released a grid of particles at the water table in this spatial area here, shown as the shaded sort of blue area. The Waterloo, the regional recharge area shown as this sort of blue area. It's hard to see here, but the city of Waterloo is in this area here. Hopefully you can see my pointer, and the city of Kitchener is down here. The Grand River flows again north to south, roughly from along the east side of this slide. So all of these particles, and they're released at the water table 150 meters apart on a grid through this system. Each particle is then tracked in time and space as it takes its path to the receptor. So then each particle then stores this data from the model. Remember, this is modeled information. Each particle then carries with it this information, which receptor it hits, the time it takes from the water table to get to that receptor, and then the magnitude of recharge that's associated with that release location. So these particles, each particle contains its own unique information. As far as water receptors go, this map shows many of the receptors that we're looking at. The green zones represent surface water streams or wetlands. There's a wetland down here to the south. The pink dots represent municipal wells. So as far as results go, now we're looking at, again, the city of Waterloo to the north, the city of Kitchener here in the south area. Each big red circle is what we call a well-field area. So in the center of each circle, you could imagine one or two or three or several municipal pumping wells. The pumping well or well fields, we're grouping them into the well fields, are shown here on the right. And we're looking at contributions of those recharge areas for each well field. So the yellow area, for example, is recharge that is contributing to the Mannheim well field. And there's quite a few municipal wells in Mannheim. The lighter blue area here is the Herb Street, represents recharge that reaches the Herb Street well field in the model. There's Strange Street here shown in light green, and Greenbrook here right in the center of the figure. Excuse me, in the figure in the kitchen area shown here in pink. There's gaps in this, and I'll talk about those in the next slide. But you can see the contributing, or the areas that contribute recharge, their simulated recharge to all the well fields in the region. This one shows the other receptors now. So this shows the same colored patterns, but it's showing recharge released at the water table that reaches surface water features. So for example, the Grand River on the east, water that reaches the Grand River is shown as this blue area. Water that reaches the Conestoga River, which is one of the main tributaries of the Grand, shown up here in the north in yellow, and the Nith River, which is another key tributary of the Grand, is shown here sort of to the west and south as this really pale green. It's very hard to see that color, but that's recharge water that discharges into the Nith River in the model. And then some of the smaller creeks and so on are shown as well. The final item I want to show in terms of results here, and these results are shown for the well fields. So as I mentioned, each particle track carries information with it, modeled information, and some of that information includes, the receptor that we just showed, and time of travel as well. So these different, again, the well fields as the red circles, the colors shown here represent time of travel from the release point at the water table to the receptor. So if we look at some of the, let's say, the warmer colors, the light pink, orange, and yellows, these are times of travel under 25 years from the release point to the well field, or to the wells. As we look at some of the longer times, the greens, the blues, and this darker pink or purple, those represent travel times more than 25 years, even more than 100 years. So you have water that reaches the municipal wells from the Moraine area that takes quite a long time to get from the water table through the Waterloo Marine complex of aquifers and aquatards to the municipal wells. So this kind of information is important as well. So in summary, we've looked at, I guess, newer ways to delineate a regional recharge area using a three-dimensional groundwater flow model and post-processing model results with particle tracking on the basis of the receptor, where the recharge ends up, the travel time to the receptor from the water table. And there's other applications as well that I haven't touched upon. As I mentioned, each water particle starts on a 150-meter cell at the water table. There's a recharge value associated with that in the model, with that area, and we can look at estimating volumetric fluxes. And we can also estimate the depth of each particle too, and that might be important in trying to understand bedrock contributions or groundwater in bedrock and the contributions of that groundwater to the wells as well. I just want to summarize now quickly by acknowledging again the different contributors to this work, and our email address there for contact information. Thanks, everybody.